The laptop was put on this engine and it's showing a 1922 Alpha A code. So what that's telling me, and the dealer would do the same thing, that the EGR is fine, but the intake, the manifold, it needs to be clean. And you probably seen one of my other videos that I have clean one. This particular unit here is a fairly new unit. It's a 2020, and what we're going to do, we're going to clean it, and then we're going to actually check this tube here. I'm going to take this tube off and just make sure that it's not clogged up. There's a possibility it could be clogged, and then I'm going to look into the EGR cooler to make sure that it's not stopped up. If it's stopped up, it's going to have to be replaced. But basically right now, the only thing is required to clear out that code is to just basically do a routine maintenance clean. Just clean out the system. So the situation that I have here is that there is nothing wrong with the EGR. So, but the intake for the EGR needed to be clean. So that's why it's so important for you to see my video on the EGR replacement. So just wanted to catch you up to speed. I have cleaned the intake. I have taken it off, so that's why you don't see the hose going to the charger. So all that's been taken off, and I have, of course, removed this tube and have cleaned out this tube to make sure this tube is clean. And this tube is actually going to the EGR cooler. So now I'm going to get started on the EGR cooler. But definitely make sure you see the other video on the EGR valve replacement, because that will explain exactly how to clean that intake, and that is very critical. You need to see that. The engine actually have a little bit over 100,000 miles, maybe 103,000 miles. So this is something that you may have to deal with, especially the maintenance part on the EGR valve. That maintenance, the intake, probably every 100,000 miles, you're probably going to need to actually follow that video and actually keep that clean, and that can save you a lot of headache. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove some items out of my way so I can lift up this EGR cooler and replace it. So I'm going to remove the hose here, and I'm going to move the tube here. It's going to the turbocharger. You can either do two things. You can actually drain the system, drain the radiator, or what I do, you just saw me have a clean bucket, And what I do, I just put a bucket, put a hose there, maybe just have it drain off to the to that clean bucket, and just whatever comes out, it just goes in that bucket. Or if not, just have your tub underneath, a little drain tub underneath, and just make sure it's clean to catch your antifreeze. But you will lose antifreeze. We're going to remove the two bolts back here, the two exhaust bolts that goes in the back of the EGR cooler. And we need a 13 millimeter. Where we're going to lose most of our coolant, when we take this line loose and there's a bolt, we're going to use an 8 millimeter socket to actually take it loose. It just has one bolt that's holding on this tube here. So once we pop it loose, coolant is just going to pour out. So I got a clean bucket underneath, as you have seen, and just make sure your bucket is aligned with the drainage that is going to come out of this this EGR cooler here. Now you may need to use a pry bar to actually put in between the cooler and the tube here, just to pry it loose. But there's an O-ring that actually holds it in place. Let's see what we got. There we go. We're going to remove these two bolts. The bolt here, and we're going to remove this bolt here. We need a 10 millimeter. I want to apologize. I forgot all about this bolt where my wrench is right now. It take an 8 millimeter wrench to take this bolt loose. Well guys, here's the old one, here's the new one, and Cummins, they make sure you have all the gaskets and so forth to go back with your new EGR cooler. Now, I just want to show you the difference. This your new EGR cooler, and this the old EGR cooler. Now, all I know is that this vehicle has 103,000 miles on it, and from what I can see, the EGR cooler is bad. Some have last 160,000 miles before they went bad. So it's between 100 and 160,000 miles. Now this vehicle is highway driven only. So it had plenty time and chances to regen, and it has worked properly, and then all of a sudden, bang, the light, the range light, so forth, just comes on, and that's the code that it has given me. So this is where we are. Next, you want to make sure your tubes, your seals, your old seals are removed, and Cummins has been so gracious to give you 4 seals. One goes on the top where my thumb is, and one goes on the bottom where my finger is. Now you want to make sure the old seal has been removed. If not, just take a knife or a thin screwdriver and just pop it loose. And you may need to just take some paint off just to make sure the seal's gonna seal properly. Cummins has quite a bit of nice paint on their products. So just so that you be familiar with the seals that I am talking about, these are the seals, and we're going to put the EGR cooler on first, and then we will go ahead and put the seals in place and tighten down the bolt. Okay, so we just want to put our exhaust gasket in place, just so you see what it looked like. Look like a double gasket there. Before I put that there, I'm going to make sure that I got my bolts ready to be put on, and this is going to be the anti-seize that I'm going to use to put on the threads, the bolt threads. It don't hurt. Just a little insurance. I would say now's a good time to tighten down our cooler, put our 2 bolts back in place, and just mount it down. And remember, take a 10mm socket. What we want to do now is to make sure our tubes are put back in, and with the new O-ring, of course, and this tube with the new O-rings, and we're going to put our bolts back in place, and we need an 8mm wrench or socket to actually put the bolts back in place. I think I use a wrench here and I use a socket down there. Now that we have our EGR cooler back in place, and before I hook up these 2 lines here, there is a tube here that actually runs from the EGR cooler to the EGR valve. And what I'm going to do, I just want to point out, I took time to actually clean the tube out, inspect the tube, and that's something that you want to do. I took the sensor out and made sure that it was clean, made sure it wasn't any carbon buildup over here. So I actually put in the bar saw and clean it out as well. I want you to know that a seal on both sides will come out, and it's a reusable seal. And just make sure you put that seal back in the way that it came out. Now, I want to point out another thing too. This tube gets extremely hot. So in case you have any wires nearby, just make sure that there's a wire loom on the wire, and make sure that it is not laying on this tube, because you see what happened here, and I thought a wire actually shorted out, but it did not. But this gets extremely hot, so you want to make sure all your wires are clear from this tube. Do, let's take off the old seal, and we're going to put a seal here, and we're going to have one on the bottom, on the lower end. This is very important. These seals are very important. If you don't have them in place properly, it will definitely leak. Do the same for this seal here. Make sure you put your new seal on. Use a 14 millimeter. All right. Let's hook up our heater hose. Tighten that up, and we can put coolant back in her. We didn't lose too much coolant out of the reservoir. The reservoir was up here where it says Cummins, and it dropped down here. So that's typical. You won't necessarily empty the reservoir when you replace an EGR cooler, but go ahead and top it off. And I like to leave the cap open just for it to breathe a little bit, and while the vehicle is actually the coolant actually circulating. Just want you to know this is about how much cooling you will actually get out of the EGR cooler, and it's quite a bit. Antifreeze is high, so I like to save it. That's why I say clean out a bucket, and we're going to put it right back in. And what we're going to do, we're going to fire the vehicle up and just let it run. Unfortunate, the dash will still remain on. This is not going to change because the ECM has to be reprogrammed. You can hook up your laptop to it. I will have a video on doing all of that in the near future. Or you can take your vehicle to the dealer and just have them to reprogram, because the ECM is thinking that it's not repaired. So it has to be reprogrammed to actually clear out the light for the ECM to actually recognize that you have done your job. Listen, that's all you have to do. But the hard part is done. You have taken care of that. So just by what we have done, you save yourself quite a bit of money. And listen, I hope this video was helpful. And feel free to look at all my other videos that are coming up in the future, and I will have some on the laptop as far as cleared out the ECM. Hope you subscribe, and we'll see you the next time.